Hey, Cloudcast community, listen up. Today's show is sponsored by Datadog, a cloud-scale monitoring and analytics platform. Datadog was built to bring clarity to complex, dynamic applications, whether they're in the cloud, on-prem, in containers, or wherever you run your applications. With powerful dashboards, seamless integrations, and more than 250 technologies they can monitor, Datadog has you covered. Whether it's AWS, Azure, or Google services, your popular open source projects and products, or web security and APIs, Datadog can help you monitor them and help you collaborate around troubleshooting them and make sure they're running great. Datadog provides deep end-to-end visibility into the health and performance of modern applications. So try it yourself. Get yourself a free 14-day trial. Go to datadoghq.com/cloudcast. That's datadoghq.com/cloudcast to try out your free 14-day trial. And if you try it out, let them know your friends at Cloudcast sent you, and they'll send you a great, wonderful, soft, awesome t-shirt with the Datadog logo on it. I wear mine all the time. So once again, that's datadoghq.com/cloudcast. Thanks for listening, and here comes the show.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back to the Cloudcast. We are coming to you live from the massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. You know, folks, it's a busy week. Anytime AWS hosts their reInvent conference, it's always a busy week. There are lots and lots of new announcements, almost a fire hose of announcements. We're going to try and cover a couple of them here in this week's Cloud News of the Week, but obviously we won't be able to get to all of them. We'll probably have to do an entire show to sort of analyze it. And we're recording this on Wednesday, the day of the Andy Jassy keynote. So, we're still all kind of processing it. We're all taking a look at what it means to the industry. We're trying to understand what the technology means. And we're going to cover a couple of them. And we're going to put, links to the AWS blog for those of you that want to dig into it even more. Obviously, you can dig into it and more and more of this will come out as the services become more mature over time. So a couple of them that got announced, I sort of lumped these into a couple of different things. We jokingly say, there's a couple of things that happen at AWS reInvent. One of them is there are a whole bunch of startups that wait anxiously to figure out whether or not AWS is going to build a native service and potentially put them out of business. Not a lot of those, came along. There were some companies, I think, that got targeted by some of the announcements. There were some backup service announcements that people were saying, kind of goes after Iron Mountain. There was some services that talk about, deeper log analysis that maybe go after Splunk a little bit. There was a service about building serverless static web pages, so kind of going after Netlify. Some things like that go on. We'll kind of highlight those. Obviously they take some pot shots at at Oracle and people migrating databases and stuff. That stuff's all pretty normal. One of the announcements, they announced something called Firecracker, which is sort of an open source project. So, Amazon doesn't always sort of be the originator of open source projects, at least ones that they're trying to get broad approval. This is sort of a very, very lightweight virtual machine that is intended to run with containers. It's sort of the technology that apparently runs underneath Fargate. So Firecracker is a new open source project that they announced. They announced something called AWS Outposts, which we had a survey out last week asking people if they thought people would AWS would go all in on on-prem or hybrid cloud, and I think the answer to that was yes. Outposts is essentially two things. It is Amazon hardware on-prem with some number of Amazon services probably to grow over time, being managed by Amazon on-prem. And then it also has an offering that is VMware managed by Amazon on-prem as well. So that'll be obviously send some ripples through the on-prem business, and a lot of different vendors will sort of be impacted by that to some extent. A few of the others that are out there, lots and lots of machine learning and analytics. We'll put posts to those. What was interesting to me, it felt a little different this time was, they really started announcing some things that felt a little bit outside the IT realm and really started to blend over into the, what Amazon business does, not AWS, but Amazon's business. So one of them was they're going to do managed ground stations. So for companies that have satellites that want to send satellite data back to Earth and then turn that into applications and so forth, Amazon is going to be basically running managed satellites or ground stations, not satellites, managed ground stations at the Amazon data centers. So, that starts to become very interesting because, we see things like Amazon bidding for regional sports networks. Obviously, maybe they're going to try and compete with ESPN. You've got, satellite video and so forth. So you start to see, and we'll put some details, some examples of this. I think we're really going to begin to see Amazon, the company, being the first customer for a lot of things that AWS will eventually build. And then it will be interesting to see how many other companies potentially scrap maybe some of their core technologies to move over to Amazon doing that. So kind of a scattershot set of the news. Like we said, there's probably been 20 plus announcements over the first couple of days. There'll be another set with Werner's keynote tomorrow, and we'll get those in the show notes. And obviously we'll talk about this in the next couple of weeks as we start to digest all that. So with that, that's our cloud news of the week. As always, thank you to Datadog for hosting the show. As we mentioned earlier, if you go to datadoghq.com/thecloudcast, you'll be able to sign up for free trials as well as getting the free t-shirt. Thank you to Datadog for sponsoring this. So with that, we're going to jump to our interview. Aaron and I have a chance to talk to a brand new startup, a very exciting startup called Rockset, who is going to talk to us about really revolutionizing how to build new data-centric applications and big data applications. So with that, let's get to the interview. Okay, let's do this. All right, Aaron, 2 weeks in a row. We're both on the show. We're both hosting the show. How have you been, man? How was your Thanksgiving?
Good. Yeah, it must be getting close to the holidays because we're both on the show together, and that means travel is at least hopefully winding down for the year for both of us. And so, Brian, how many airline and hotel clubs did you make this year?
I made them all. I think I'm going to end up doing about 110 flights for the year. So it's good to wind down a little bit. It's good to have both of us on the show, and it's good to reintroduce yourself to your family and all. So hey.
Yeah, and we have to, and real quick too, we have to start running and start training. Krispy Kreme announcements come out before too much longer, right? It is Thanksgiving, so
yep.
We're going to have to start prepping everyone to get ready for that as well.
Yep. So listen, you and I, we always start the year, and as the year goes on, we go, hey, what are some areas we want to dive into? And we've always said, look, you and I don't have a background in data science. We don't necessarily have a background in, data apps and databases. And we've always said the best thing we can do is go find really smart people that have a background in this stuff and are doing, sometimes evolutionary stuff and sometimes really revolutionary stuff. And I think today's show is going to be very cool because our guest not only is starting a new company, but looks to be doing some really revolutionary stuff around how to build and use data-centric applications. So very excited to have Venkat Venkataramani, who is co-founder and CEO of Rockset. So Venkat, welcome to the show.
So yes, thank you for inviting us and inviting me to be part of the show. I'm super excited to talk about what we're building here.
Yeah, excellent. So first off, give us a little bit of your background. Prior to starting the company, what were you doing? What sort of technology areas were interested to you? And then what ultimately kind of drove you to want to go start Rockset?
Great. Yes, I think prior to founding Rockset, I was managing all online data infrastructure at Facebook. This was the set of services and systems on top of which all Facebook user-facing products were built on top of. This was from years 2007 until 2015 I was there, and I helped scale the online data infrastructure at Facebook from about 40 million monthly active users to 1.5 billion by the time I left in 2015. And prior to that, I was building databases at Oracle. And what I like to joke about is I've been building databases throughout my career, and I always build it in the most interesting places. In the early 2000s, it was inside Oracle Server Technologies team. Learned a tremendous ton from working with amazing people there. And then from mid-2000s to 2015 was I think places like Facebook was the best place to build databases. And now it's all in the cloud. And so we're trying to reimagine what data management should look like in the cloud in Rockset. And you asked a follow-up question, which was what really prompted me to found this company. It was really a series of conversation. When I left Facebook, what I wanted to spend a lot of time was understanding kind of how the world works. I had a pretty good idea on the problems that data infrastructure problems that Facebook was facing and how Facebook would approach those kinds of challenges. And when I left, I really spent a lot of time talking to people in the real world outside of Facebook. So, 2007 to 2015 was pre-AWS and post-AWS and public cloud infrastructure, pre-Docker, post-Docker, pre-Kubernetes and post-Kubernetes. And the world was just very different. And so I spent a lot of time trying to understand what are the problems worth solving, what are the big sources of complexity, especially around data and data infrastructure in enterprises. And those conversations were really the genesis of the company.
And Venkat, sometimes we have founder guests that have had, have done past startups previously. And sometimes we have founder guests that, we're really trying to introduce something new, and it sounds like it's breaking the mold from previous things that we've known. And also there's this trend on the podcast here early on of, as the Google-like infrastructures or the Facebook-like infrastructure were coming to be. But then I think everyone was like, yes, I want to be like that. But then everyone had trouble wrapping their head around what it meant to operate like that. And then, Rockset comes along and you're starting to attempt to deliver things in a very different way. You see terms like, apps without pipelines, serverless search, schemaless ingest, natively uses SQL. Like, tell us a little bit more about exactly what it means to kind of operate in this new paradigm.
Yes. The crux of the problem, if I were to capture in the current stack, is that there is just way too many disparate data management systems that a developer or a data engineer or a data scientist has to put up with and plumb together to turn useful data that may be in a bunch of different places into useful applications or interactive notebooks. And things come in different shapes, and some are semi-structured data like JSON and CSVs and whatnot. And some data continues to live in structured kind of like operational databases. And what we are trying to do is, what would it take to not make it easy for you to transform the data and put it into a system? What would it take to actually eliminate a lot of the steps in the middle? And so when we thought about, why do people do ETL? Why do people do a lot of transformations? And a big reason is that, you want to build powerful applications that wants to do full feature SQL on a lot of these kinds of disparate data sets. And there was really no easy way to do that. The set of kind of a plethora of data management solutions all are very, very highly specialized. They were built really for the pre-cloud era, really optimized to run on dedicated Linux servers and what have you. And then when we looked at the cloud and when we looked at the opportunity of, easy access to so much, on-demand kind of provisioning, APIs to provision more compute, APIs to provision more storage, we really thought, how do we simplify this? And so what we enable is, get an account with Rockset, give us read access to your data. We will go and automatically, ingest all of your data, schematize them into fully optimized SQL collections so that you can directly go from raw data to very fast SQL access on top of them. And without basically having to set up any of the traditional kind of like pipelines and ETLs and shards and servers and what have you. And this is what we say, a lot of these kind of ad hoc data applications today really resemble a Rube Goldberg machine of sorts, where you're sort of plumbing together multiple disparate things and data flows from one place to another place to another place. Upkeep is very expensive. Setting them up requires a lot of people time and it's really expensive in terms of both people and scaling them. And there's just so much complexity that comes with it. And we're trying to eliminate a lot of the complexity by just allowing people to just say, don't worry about if your data is kind of messy, if it's semi-structured or structured. You can get an account with Rockset, point us at wherever the data lives, and you can, if you know SQL, you already know how to use Rockset. And the whole thing is offered as a serverless, cloud, engine that you can just instantly go start using it without having to worry about infrastructure and, kind of like pipelines and what have you.
Yeah. So, a number of years ago, maybe, 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, there was this concept of data lakes and people, a lot of companies and a lot of, vendors and others said, hey, there's lots of data out there. If you could pull it all into one location, and now you can start, making queries against it. And data lakes had a lot of hype. They didn't really go anywhere because it was complicated. You had to learn Hadoop. You had to set up servers. You had to, you couldn't necessarily always use a SQL querying language. You had to, know how much capacity to plan for. I mean, it sounds like, and maybe we're way off on this, but it sounds like you guys are really, like you said, sort of the next generation, the cloud iteration of that thing, that concept that sort of was data lakes, but maybe like that world just sort of didn't really work. And you guys, because of your background, are going to try and fulfill that promise. Is that sort of a fair, put it in the ballpark of what you're trying to do, or are you doing something that's really, really different from what they try to do?
It's very related, but Rockset is not, so Rockset works very well in the cloud. And if you think about what was the purpose of a data lake, right? I think it had multiple purposes. And I think the traditional way of solving that was trying to use one kind of technology to do everything. So the primary purpose of data lake, I would say, is to be able to accumulate your data in a reliable fashion. And there's a lot of storage and need to be able to deal with a wide variety of data sets. That is one big function of a data lake. But also, I think where the bigger complexity comes in, like what do you do to operationalize portions of that, right? You have accumulated a lot of this data. Now, how do you put it to work? How do you make your decisions more data-driven? How do you engage with your customers better? How do you find different sources of revenue for your company? How do you build data-driven products on top of this? So operationalizing that data requires a lot more elasticity in terms of compute and in terms of indexing strategies of data in the lake. And that's where I think a lot of people say data lake is where data goes to sort of like die rather than come to life. And that's really the problem that we are trying to solve. We're not trying to eliminate a data lake. We are actually saying if you already have a data lake, great. Now you can use Rockset to actually bring a lot of the data to life and actually operationalize them. So if you take, for example, in the cloud, people don't really intentionally a lot of the time create this, but Amazon S3 is a really awesome place for you to store a lot of data. It has no compute, it's pure storage, and it's pretty cheap, and it's very reliable. And so a lot of people accumulate a lot of data in Amazon S3, and it's different types of data in different formats coming from different sources and what have you. But then once it's in there, how do I operationalize any of that? Because there is no compute that comes with Amazon S3. Now is where the Rube Goldberg machine starts. And that's exactly what we're eliminating with Rockset. So now with Rockset, you already have accumulated a lot of the data and in just some storage-based systems like Amazon S3. Now you get an account with Rockset, point just the portions of the data that you want to operationalize. And it may be 3 to 5% of the data you're accumulated in your quote-unquote cloud data lake, which is Amazon S3 type systems. And instantly you can now operationalize it and get like sub-second queries on the data that you have indexed, on top of on Rockset. And you can build applications, you can do data-driven apps, you can do automation. If you want to for example, if you want to build a active surveillance, there's a lot of real-time data streams that are coming in. And some data, historical data, continues to be in data lakes. You can combine those real-time streams with data from your data lakes very, very easily using Rockset. So essentially, we're reimagining the promise of a data lake within an enterprise. I think one complex, big platform technology that try to do everything, I think is probably not how you should do it in the cloud. I think the storage should be completely separated from compute. The data indexes should be completely separated from how the data is stored, and you probably don't want to index and bring to life the entire data lake, but you should be able to bring to life just the portion you need to be able to build the applications and do the automation that you care about. And so that's really the promise. Make it very, very easy for people to go from useful data that could be sitting in a data lake without any compute or any kind of fast data processing technologies, and turning that into a data-powered application is extremely simple. It's literally one step in Rockset that with traditional, kind of open source, technologies that you have to, plumb together, it would be a, multi-man month project right now. That would be a single step in Rockset.
And Venkat, as part of that, you also highlighted previously that all of this is accessible via SQL. And that's, widely known by technologists, data analysts like that. That's a lowest common denominator, if you will, right? And so if you take that and you combine that with some of the more cutting edge things like serverless concepts, which is, very much the focus of Rockset, Is it really the focus on making it easier to build this out for the masses and really be able to combine all of these technologies almost seamlessly, but then also provide that, something they know, SQL, if I'm kind of like connecting all of the dots? Is that a good way to look at this?
Yes. In fact, interestingly, in our earliest prototype, we did not choose SQL. And when our early kind of pilot customers and co-development partners were trying to use us, and they were like, oh, it's so easy to just point Rockset at the data. I don't have to do ingest and pipelines. There was a really good aha moment. And then instantly they were asking, but can I just use SQL to query it now, right? Like now that you've taken all of this data. And then we were like, oh, no, read our, new API and figure out a way to construct your applications on top of our custom proprietary API. And there was a huge turnoff. And we realized, I think, there was the pendulum swung really hard during the last decade, especially with the proliferation of open source data management technologies towards a lot of specialized systems. And I think if how we see the world, we see the pendulum swinging back towards SQL-based systems to in the cloud, especially, so that you don't need to worry about too many specialized systems for different types of data management. Whether you're doing, storing document data, keys and values, time series data, graph data. I mean, I think if you can, the pendulum is swinging back hard, and SQL allows us to say, you already know how to use Rockset instead of having to learn an entirely new kind of, tool chain and what have you and APIs. And also another big advantage of SQL is that it works already with your ecosystem, right? Like I think whether it is kind of data live dashboards that you want to build, you can use your existing dashboarding tools to build those kinds of, live applications on top of Rockset. So it's sort of like not just the lowest common denominator in being able to, make Rockset accessible to a lot of people. It also means that we can work with their ecosystem, right? It's not a full-fledged set of new tools and new tool chain that they have to now learn and incorporate into their company. Using Rockset would be like you already know not only you already know how to use Rockset, all of your tools that you use today can work with us seamlessly.
Yeah, no, I think you're really, just beyond the high level thing, you're really hitting on a lot of things that, that ultimately help companies be successful, which is like lower the barrier to entry for people to learn your technology, to reuse what they already have. The fact that people don't have to move their data, there's always been do I move the data to the compute or do I move the compute to the data? You're just saying, look, just leave it where it is. It's good that they're separate and we can leave them. I think all that stuff is really powerful. You talked about some of the early companies and customers and testers that you were working with that were giving you feedback. Did you find there were sort of any patterns or types of applications that people were like, oh, I can now build these differently or less expensive or with a lot less hassle using Rockset than maybe they had been doing with previous systems in the past?
Oh, yes. I can give a couple of anecdotal examples. There's like a wide variety of things you can build on top of Rockset. You can go from one use case is people building market intelligence applications where they get a lot of third-party data sets and they have a lot of internal data sets and they're trying to put them together. And a lot of third-party data sets comes in these kinds of funny JSON with a lot of nesting. And previously, getting a couple of these third-party data sets and combining that with their internal kind of transactional historical data to being able to find patterns on what's happening in the market, what's happening with their customers, what else are they buying, what else should we be selling, and what is working and what is not. That usually took them a 2 to 3 person team a month to build a new kind of live dashboard that gives them more kind of peripheral vision on the market. This was done now. The same kind of a project went end to end in a matter of days. In 2 days, one person working with us was able to achieve the same kind of a project and deliver a similar kind of a project. And especially because of our ability to index semi-structured data and do SQL on it, meant that they could just dump a lot of this data. The third-party data sets were arriving continuously into Amazon S3 already. And They got an account, they pointed Rockset at it, and then they started building their dashboard using SQL. In a couple of days, they were able to build what they wanted to build. That previously was an ad hoc one-off analysis that a team of 2 or 3 had to build over multiple weeks. So this is one kind of use case. Another use case that we are trying to, that is also very interesting that is coming is with a lot of real-time data. People that where the duration, the data latency from where like an event occurring. Let's say somebody is want to personalize a e-commerce website. That as the user, you want to like in real time combine users' behavioral data on what are the products that this particular individual likes. What are the where are they coming from? What else? What other products are popular for the geographical regions that particular user is coming from? And instead of trying to build a lot of these kinds of offline analysis, they can do live personalization by streaming all of these clickstream data on who's looking at what, who's searching for what, and in real time construct these kinds of queries in SQL to be able to say, show me the most popular products for people from this geographical region. And that is just, you can go from raw data and ask a question like that, get the response back in like 50 or 60 milliseconds from Rockset, and instantly show, hey, you may also like these other products because they seem to be popular from the geographical regions where you're coming from. Those kinds of things are like a couple of examples of like, the kind of applications that are getting built on top of Rockset that is extremely simple now compared to any kind of complex, infrastructure that people are used to, that is quote unquote state of the art.
Yeah.
Nice. That's really fascinating. Brian, did you have anything before I wrap us up?
Yeah, I want to ask one last one, and this may get a little deep. You don't have to go too deep for those of us who aren't super into databases, but you have a concept that's called schemaless ingest, and I know I've heard thousands and thousands of stories of DBAs and schemas changing and their life being difficult because of that. Like, give folks the Cliff Notes version of what does that mean and kind of how does that work? Obviously, that's important for dealing with lots of different types of data and formats, but like, how does that even work?
Yes, great question. That is a key differentiator of Rockset than compared to anything else. So how does it work? So when you create the equivalent of a table in Rockset, you don't really describe what fields are in there, what types these fields are, or anything like that. A table or collections is what we call them, is really a container of data, right? It just stores a bunch of data. And what we do is as data comes in, we inspect the data as they come in. We don't need to, conform that with a predefined shape of the data that is going to be in that particular table. And we organize them in our backend in a way that we can do fast SQL processing on them. And it is strongly typed, so we don't lose any of the typing information as the data comes in. If new fields appear, they will automatically get added to the table. And so after you load a lot of data, you can go and ask Rockset, describe the shape of the data that you have seen so far in this table. And then Rockset will tell you, okay, here are the top level fields I've seen. Here are the types they came with. Here is how often these fields were populated. Some fields occurred in every one of the document or record that you sent. Some fields were not present for 50% of them or 60% of them or whatever. All that information is summarized for you. And based on that, you can now start constructing SQL queries on that directly. And so it's a very different way of managing, of organizing the data, which is kind of like a proprietary, set of algorithms and implementation that we have done since founding the company. But the power of that really comes to how low the barrier is to basically be able to load any different kind of data. And if I want to go a little more detail, probably the best analogy that you can think of is like, traditional databases are statically typed. Their typing information is schematized and has to be provided ahead of time. And so they're like, in programming languages, they are more like the Java or C or C++, which are statically typed languages. And then there's really no databases that do dynamic typing, which is like more like a Python or a Ruby or one of these kind of like dynamically typed languages. And Rockset is more of the latter. We try to provide, SQL on top of dynamically typed data, and there's a lot of deep tech innovation that we have done to enable that. Our engineering blog has a lot more of those details. If you go to rockset.com and click the blog, you will be able to read, some of our chief architects and key, engineers in the in our team writing and sharing the world on how we actually do it. So there's a lot more details that you can read. But just to summarize, we index the data and organize the data without knowing the shape of the data ahead of time, and we organize it in a way so that we can power very fast SQL, analysis, SQL queries on top of the data, and that's really how we organize it over in our backend distributed data management system. And that's what we call smart schemas, because even though you didn't describe the shape of the data at the time of creating your collections and tables, we do provide that for you automatically.
Very cool. Very, very cool. And definitely we'll get some links in the show notes so folks can go take a look at that, kind of pointers to the website. And I know you guys are doing some stuff in terms of like webinars and all. We'll get that into the show notes as well. Aaron, you want to wrap it up? I think we've kind of gone into things that in reality, we've talked about this. I think we're going to get far beyond your and I's ability to dive into it. But I think people are going to be very interested in this, especially given how much easier and faster and all this is going to make folks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would also just like to add too, this is a space where we're definitely trying to get into more as well. So if anybody has any ideas out there for guests, let us know through all the various channels. We always would love to hear both feedback about the show as well as anybody that's interesting out there that you'd like to bring to our attention. So thank you for that ahead of time. Venkat, where can everyone find out more about Rockset and about you and kind of get more information before we close out?
Yes, anybody can go to rockset.com. We have different editions, and we do have a free edition for people to kick the tires with. So go to rockset.com, and in the top, there's a green button to request access and get started for free. So just click that button, and we'll work with you. Your account is set up, and you can successfully use Rockset. And we also have more information about the company, and we have an engineering blog. All of that is listed from our website. So rockset.com is where all the action is.
Yeah. And you guys will be at AWS reInvent?
Yes. We will be in booth number 813. We will be there in the expo hall. The core team is going to be basically camping out there for the 4 or 5 days there. So we want to meet as many people as possible there. And if you're going to be in reInvent, please stop by, and we'll love to show you a live demo of all the things that we just talked about.
Very cool. Very cool. Listen, folks, Venkat, thank you so much for the time today and kind of educating us on not only Rockset, but about, kind of your vision for this and how people can start getting engaged with it. So folks, with that, thank you so much for listening today, as always, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.